All right, so we've been told many times these last couple of years how America is more divided than it's ever been since dating back to the Civil War. That's a pretty scary thing to think about. Is it something that people are just saying to kind of ruffle up some feathers, or is it actually true? There's a large portion of Eastern Oregon who wants to break away from Oregon and join Idaho to become the greater Idaho area. Those people on the eastern portion of Oregon are sick of being ran by the liberals over in Portland. There's also a movement for like Weld County in Colorado. They want to join up with Wyoming. So with that being said, there was an article that when it first came out, because it came out April 29th, I read the headline and I really didn't think much of it. But then yesterday I heard someone discussing it, and then I realized how much it really did hit home with me, because I went through a situation with this where it wasn't the exact same situation, but it definitely changed my family and myself's lives dramatically. So let's go and dive into this article right now. It's out of the New York Post, and I didn't like how the headline, anytime it feels like you're trying to villainize one side as opposed to the other side, I'm never going to agree with that, especially coming out of the New York Post. But let's go ahead and go through this article. It's actually a pretty short article. So the headline of this article was "Wealthy White Louisiana Residents Win Right to Split from Baton Rouge and Form Their Own City." Do we really need to put in wealthy white? Why couldn't we just put in residents of Baton Rouge decide to form their own city? Anyways, I digress. Let's get into this article right now. A group of wealthy white Baton Rouge residents have won a decades-long battle to split from the majority black city to form their own suburb following a state Supreme Court ruling. After reversing a lower court's decision on Friday, the Supreme Court ruled 4-3 in favor of the incorporation of St. George, which will form in southeast Baton Rouge. This is the culmination of citizens exercising their constitutional rights. We voted and we won, Andrew Murrell, one of the leaders of the St. George campaign, said in a statement following the victory. Now we begin the process of delivering on our promises of a better city, he added. We welcome both our friends and foes to the table to create St. George. Much like the case with Central, the last incorporated city to be born in East Baton Rouge Parish, the St. George initiative began with hopes of residents starting a new school district before ultimately deciding to create their own city. Although the St. George supporters failed to garner enough votes in 2015, 4 years later, the initiative won the election before it was stalled by a lengthy court battle, the New York Times reported. Sharon Weston Broome, the mayor-president leading the combined Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge parish governments, had sued the St. George organizers, arguing that the split would siphon more than $48 million in annual tax revenue from the local government. The opposition also argued that St. George would not have the proper budget to operate on its own. Justice William J. Crane, the author of the majority opinion, disagreed with the city's assessment and claimed that a thriving St. George could even become an asset to the declining Baton Rouge. Despite her long-standing position, Broome conceded the battle on Friday following the Supreme Court's ruling. The NAACP, however, maintained its fears that the formation of St. George will negatively impact Baton Rouge's majority black community. Okay, let's just go back to that right there, because I do not agree with that whatsoever. Why do we have to make this a racial thing where, oh, these evil white people are leaving and it's going to negatively impact all the black residents? So is the NAACP now stating that just black people don't know how to operate and then also run their own governments? Is that what they're trying to say, since these horrible, rich white people are leaving? The St. George plan poses significant risks to our education system, threatens the continuity of critical programs, and challenges community representation, the local chapter of the NAACP said in a statement Monday. The creation of a new municipality introduces considerable uncertainty around funding allocation for our schools, jeopardizing the cornerstone of our community's future, education. During the news conference Monday at the St. George Fire Department headquarters, Murrell promised residents that the new city's officials will work to finally set up a new school district, as he acknowledged the challenges to come. Number one, we created a city. We have not created a school district, Murrell said. They are two distinct separate animals. They have separate budgets, separate leadership structures, but I would be dishonest if I didn't tell you what's next on the agenda would be the creation of the St. George School District, which is long overdue in a parish that is near dead last in the state and is near dead last in the country in education, he added. But the new government can get started, however. Governor Jeff Landry must appoint the city's first mayor and city council members. Residents will vote on their new leaders in the new election cycle, according to the city's website. Okay, again, I don't like how we like to pit this person towards that person, but the reason this really hit home with me is I could understand where these residents who are wanting to create St. George are coming from. In the past, there was always concerns about violence in the schools in Baton Rouge, about the racial tensions that were in the schools, and parents got sick of it. Also, think about it. If you are paying your taxes for a school, which is like one of the last in education in the country, why would you want to continue to fund that? So these residents of Baton Rouge finally decided to take a stand for it. They wanted something better for their kids. They wanted to see their taxpayers going towards something to better their school system. Now to bring this back into perspective, why this really hit home with me. Real quick, guys, I will get back into this conversation, but first things first, if you do love this content or if you do want to follow along, kind of see what I ramble about in any future events to come, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button, maybe give me a thumbs up, notification bell, that way you're notified every single time that I put out a new video. Let's get back to this topic right now. I recently, probably about a year, it'll be about a year ago, moved to Florida with my family from Colorado. Now, Colorado in the past was always known as more of a purple state, right? It was always like ran as a middle of the way type of state, you know, or it really wasn't a hardcore conservative or a hardcore Democrat unless there was some counties or whatever that you did go to. There is a portion of Colorado, though, that is sick of how the state is being ran, and that's Weld County, which is this northern county in Colorado that borders Wyoming, and they want to become a part of Wyoming because essentially what it is now is Denver and Boulder are running the state of Colorado. Even though you have all these outlying rural areas, they are now being ran by the super far left politics of these two major cities. So much so that the governor of Colorado right now, who lives in Boulder, governor of Colorado, not to live in the governor's mansion. He decided to stay up in his multi-million-dollar place over in Boulder. So when you were living in this Boulder bubble and growing up in Colorado, we always had this joke where Boulder is not Colorado. Boulder is pretty much just like this little island of California that decided to land itself within Colorado, where the state of Colorado is now being ran with that mindset. We did not fit anymore. We decided to leave, but anytime there was mention of Weld County then joining Wyoming, because I was not far from Weld County and where we lived, I was definitely intrigued by that because I'm like, man, maybe we could just move, you know, pretty much a few miles to the north and then we could be a part of that and not have to deal with these far left policies. And I will tell you, I was a 5th generation Colorado native. I probably wouldn't have left if it wasn't for having kids, because my kids were my main mindset as to why we did leave the blue state. Once my oldest did become of age to go into kindergarten, I was not going to send him into public schools because I knew what those schools were teaching. From my mindset, the schools in Colorado, all the public schools are now indoctrination zones where they're teaching all about pronouns. They're teaching all about transgenderism. Now the schools, you watch something called CNN 10, and you can opt out if you want, but guess what? Your kid then has to go into the hallway and sit there as if they're in trouble while the rest of the kids are indoctrinated with CNN 10. I was not willing to put my kid through this. I wanted to raise my kids in a more conservative way, and we got to the point where we knew we were not going to be able to do it in Colorado. On top of that as well, our views were not respected at all. It was, you need to abide and accept what we are telling you right now. What it came down to was we put our kid into private school. So on top of paying for private school, property taxes were going up like crazy, and I was funding the public schools at the same time paying extra for my kid to go to a private school because I did not want him to be exposed to all the things that were getting taught in the public school. This is why I am such an advocate for school choice. If you do have school choice, it might get these public schools to straighten their shit out a little bit and look at what is important when we are talking about the curriculum in these schools. How about we stop focusing so much on the sexual identity and the pronouns of these kids, and we focus more on math, science, English, the things that kids are supposed to get taught in school. Also, another thing that the far left Democrats decided to do in regards to the school system is when we're talking about sexual education now, a big way that they get around is like, oh, you know what? Schools are not required to teach sex ed. It is up to them. But you better believe that every single public school in the state of Colorado within the Denver metro area will be teaching that sex ed curriculum. Before I go over what that entails, when I was in school, let me see if memory serves me right, I believe I went through sex ed. It was in either 4th or 5th grade, right around there. And essentially all it was is teaching the anatomy of a girl and the anatomy of a boy. That was it. Now it dives in so much deeper, ultimately piquing a lot of kids' interest into, okay, what is this thing called sex? It's not so much about anatomy anymore. It's about so much more. There's this website, sexeducationcollaboration.org, I believe it is. And they kind of gave a base rundown of what is taught if you are teaching sex ed in the Colorado schools. What is required to be taught if you are teaching sex ed in Colorado schools. So let me just go over these bullet points right now. Of course, at the top of it, it says Colorado schools are not required to teach sex education, but you better believe that the public schools are. If sex education is offered, then the curriculum must be comprehensive as defined by the law. If sex education is offered, curriculum must not emphasize sexual abstinence as a primary or sole acceptable preventative method available to students. If sex education is offered, curriculum must not exclude the health needs of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or intersex individuals. If sex education is offered, curriculum must include instruction on consent. If pregnancy options are taught, abortion must be included as an option for pregnancy. Parents or guardians can remove their children from sex education instruction with written notification. This is referred to as an opt-out policy. So I guarantee what they're going to do is the exact same thing that they're doing with kids who did not want to opt into the CNN 10. They're going to sit you in the hallway, or they're going to put you somewhere as if you are the outsider. You are the problem child, while they decided to indoctrinate all the other kids in the classroom. If sex education is offered, the curriculum must be medically accurate. Parents, caregivers have the opportunity to review curricula prior to instruction. Now I'm going to tell you another story when I was growing up in school. This was during the which election with Bob Dole and Bill Clinton. They did a mock election where you got to go in and vote for the president. And the teachers definitely gave their bias on, hey, you know, Clinton's the man. They gave their bias so much so that out of my entire classroom, there was only 2 kids who voted for Bob Dole. And because they were the outsiders, those kids were bullied. And I was not one of those kids. I was indoctrinated away to think that those kids were the outsiders and they were wrong. I guarantee you this is the exact same thing that they are doing with schools right now. If you decide not to use pronouns, if you decide not to do the Trinity thing right now, which is the whole which LGBTQIA plus whatever do you align with? This is how they get around to it. Like, hey, no, it's okay. You can opt out. But I guarantee that there are kids who are opting out who are getting bullied into this stuff. I do not doubt that what is happening with St. George and Baton Rouge right now is going to be something that will be happening more and more in the future. So many cities in these states are sick of being ran by these large, far left blue cities to the point where they're like, you know what? I'm done. I'm over. I just want to leave. I want to go somewhere where I can raise my kids how I view necessary. I'm sick of paying my taxes towards an agenda that is consistently against me. Now in Colorado, El Paso County is the largest county in Colorado, and that incorporates Colorado Springs. So what do you do? Because I guarantee there's a huge effort right now to turn Colorado Springs blue. Because in the last election, it was red. They did vote for Donald Trump. But there's a mass amount of people who are going into Colorado Springs right now, and I guarantee you very few of them are voting on the right side of the aisle. It'll be interesting to see how things develop, to see whether or not more and more of this happen, where some of these more conservative style cities or portions of states are just like, I'm done. I am sick of this. I am sick of dedicating my taxpayers to a cause that is against me. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I appreciate so much. I ask that you do follow along if you do love this content, and I will catch you on the next one.